Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Techsperts presented by Buchanan Technologies. In this edition, we are joined by RJ Friedman, Buchanan's Chief Information Security Officer, as he highlights the 5 most impactful ways businesses can spend their cybersecurity dollars, which include operational strategies and security controls that every organization should have in its arsenal. Please be sure to take a look at our past webinars and helpful documents provided below, as they will supplement the information that is being presented today. And with that, let's go ahead and jump into the video.
Awesome. Thank you, Ellie. As mentioned, today I'll be speaking about the 5 things that you should do to best spend your security dollars. And this will be a short one because the answer to that is, well, it depends. I know that's a terrible answer and probably not what you want to hear. And I'll be giving you the 5 best things to spend your money on by the end of this talk. But the truth is that every company is unique. A company with no web presence doesn't have the same risks as an online only retailer. A company which processes credit cards is far different than a company which processes personal health information. That being said, I've been asked to answer an even tougher question before. Back during the election season in 2020, I was part of a panel along with Google, the CISOs from the Democratic National Committee, Republican National Committee, and a few other organizations like Facebook. We were tasked with finding the one thing that every political campaign should do. What is one thing that every campaign could do? Well, my advice was quit lying, but they quickly reminded me that we were specifically talking about cybersecurity advice. Got it. Now, for those of you mathematicians out there, you know that one thing isn't very many things. And in such a complex digital world, well, kind of depends. So the panel voted at the end of a few weeks of meetings, and really what Google had done was give us 5 things to choose from. And so by the end of a couple weeks, the one thing that everyone decided that we should implement was multi-factor authentication. One thing. Not a bad choice by any means, but I actually disagreed. In fact, going into the project, we were given these 5 options on which to vote to establish a baseline for our deliberations over the next few weeks. And as you see, MFA was one of them, probably because Google was promoting their solution. But I didn't see what I thought was really the correct answer. So I wrote in, don't try this at home, which eventually turned into create a security culture. But you see, MFA, while it's great and it's definitely one of the first controls you should implement, as you'll see, it's not quite that easy, or it's not quite that simple. And again, it depends on what you're trying to protect and what the organization that you're trying to protect is and does. Um, just a quick example, right? One of the presidential races that I did cybersecurity consulting for had over 40 applications in use. So when trying to implement multi-factor authentication over 40 different applications, it takes some work. A congressional race that I worked on, far fewer resources, had still over 15 applications in use. Identifying those applications, even 15, took hours, meetings, phone tags, Slack messaging. Then you start getting into additional questioning. What's the app called? What type of risks does it pose? Who's responsible for each app? What roles get access? While we're on the subject, does the app have role based access control for internal role configurations? How is that configured? Do you know if the app is secure? Have you asked the company which provides the application to provide their security questionnaire for you? Can we enforce stricter controls around, say, Twitter? Just like most businesses, campaigns aren't focused on cybersecurity, and they certainly didn't expect that such a seemingly easy thing would result in so many additional considerations. After all, they were told the one thing you should do is MFA. So, just like they're focused on selling their candidate and their ideas, companies like Home Depot are focused on selling hammers. Other than some of the big national races, campaigns don't even have the resources to hire the cybersecurity staff that they need. Most businesses don't either. We have some very large clients, even that tens of thousands of endpoints, who have decided that they need to outsource because cybersecurity is not their business. It's difficult to build a quality security organization when you make medical devices. And so when you tell a business to just implement MFA, well, it's not always quite that easy. There are a lot of variables in play if you want it done right. Same goes for the hundreds of other controls aside from MFA. And so, with that in mind, I know that story probably didn't tell you exactly what you need to hear. What are the 5 things? Where do we start? So, here are my top 5 recommendations when it comes to spending your security dollars wisely. I've split it out into mainly 2 sections. The first section, it's all about planning. The 2 things that you could do as leaders to ensure that a successful cybersecurity program will be implemented. And that is important because if you don't have a security program that is based around known procedures, practices, frameworks, you probably will end up wasting money and not spending your money the best that you can. Secondly, I've identified 3 actual controls that most organizations will see a return on investment. This is something that every company of every shape and size can probably benefit from. So I'll go through each one of those now. First, again, don't try this at home, or in other words, don't try this by yourself. Assign an expert like a CISO, a Chief Information Risk Officer, or a Chief Information Security Officer, or a virtual CISO, which is a fractional CISO, to own your cybersecurity risk. This leader has an important job creating a security culture, making sure that everyone at the company is aware of cybersecurity. That's a first step. But also, and the first thing that this CISO should be doing is the second thing on this list here: performing a gap analysis and building a roadmap. Um, from that gap analysis that they do, a risk assessment can be done, which can help prioritize your gaps in terms of the risk that they allow, thus finding your ROI. Now, companies and the risks are unique, right? There are a lot of different security frameworks out there built to help companies of every shape and size become more secure. For many companies, including our clients, ranging from international airports down to mom and pop janitorial services, a great cybersecurity framework to use is the CIS 20, which was rebranded recently as the CIS 18. And that covers most security controls that almost every organization can benefit from. That said, there are some other great ones out there that are very popular too. You may have heard of NIST, the National Institute of Science and Technology, and they have created their what's called the CSF, or the Cybersecurity Framework. And it's a pretty entry level, accessible cybersecurity framework that, again, will benefit all businesses. Once you start to get a little bit more advanced, you get into maybe another one of the NIST frameworks like NIST 800 by 53, and maybe some industry specific compliance that you have to abide by, like HIPAA, which can affect your cybersecurity program. But at a basic level, again, what this CISO is doing once they start is providing that gap analysis, building a roadmap so that you know where to best spend your money. And that's my advice to companies of all sizes. If you can't get a full time CISO, outsource one. So, that said, there are a few controls which you could put in place that will have a positive return on investment in almost every organization, unless you're completely paper based. Those are multi-factor authentication, right? As we discovered through the Google project that we did for the campaigns, MFA is a lot of people's opinion, the best thing that you can do to secure your organization. And I agree in some ways, right? Identity is the new perimeter. With COVID, the world has changed quite a bit. Your employees might be in the office again, starting to get there. They might still be working from home, like I am, obviously. They might be working from, a beach in Mexico. It really depends on where they are, and you need to secure them where they are. You can't rely on a large castle built around your um, headquarters anymore to protect your employees. You need to make sure that they're protected where they go, and MFA does that in a few specific ways. For those of you who aren't familiar, multi-factor authentication verifies that you are who you say you are by having you put in a code that maybe goes to your cell phone, that goes to maybe a token that your IT team can present you, so that when before you log into any of your important applications, your identity is verified. You can do a whole bunch of really neat stuff too with that. You can set rules up around not letting someone log in one moment from Dallas and the next moment from China. There's a lot of more sophisticated things that you could do with MFA solutions down the line. Getting just the basic version, though, as a start, is a very, very good start. The next thing, again, for those of you mathematicians, you may notice this is two things. But the next thing, and I've bundled them together, security awareness training and a secure email gateway. I put them together for a couple reasons. One, email is just so important. It's vitally important. It's a threat vector used in over 80% of attacks, and nearly 100% of those attacks involve a human making a mistake somewhere along the way. So while your email security gateway will protect you from getting spam, ransomware, phishing attacks 99% of the time, there's that 1% that will still get through, and you have to rely on your users to be your firewall for you. If your users are not trained, they can't do that. And this goes far beyond email. This goes to being an employee benefit beyond what the work that they do for you. All of your employees have bank accounts that they access through the internet. They go and do their shopping online on Amazon. They order pizza online. All of those accounts are better protected when those employees are better educated. The next thing that I recommend is a very solid antivirus tool. And these days we call it next generation antivirus. All that means is that it has additional detection mechanisms beyond a signature. Signature is you could think of it like a driver's license, an ID number. Every program out there, every application has its own ID number. Traditional antivirus says, well, if you have this ID number, maybe I know you're good, or in particular, in this case, we know you're bad. You're on the blacklist because we know that this is malware. That worked pretty well up until the late, 2000s, but then attackers started getting much more intelligent. Um, Not only are they changing, they have malware that changes itself and has a different hash number or ID number every single time that it's used. But even more recently than that, they've started using attacks which utilize tools that are in most enterprise environments, like PowerShell or command line. That's called living off the land attacks or binary and script attacks as well. Spotting those types of attacks takes a newer style of antivirus that started to come out in the early 2010s. It's called EDR. Some will call it NGAV. Some will call it EDR. EDR is EDR is endpoint detection and response. Endpoint detection and response goes a bit beyond just next gen AV and actually logs data, logs behaviors, so that your security analysts down the line, if you end up investing in that, can go and rehash events that happen and hunt for malware. Um, Many of the great NGAV companies, next gen antivirus companies out there today also have EDR, which you can then upgrade to. Look for that when you're selecting your next gen antivirus tool. Make sure that there's a path toward a more sophisticated security model down the line, even if you're starting out with their basic product. Now, if you don't think that you can get started building out an in-depth security practice or don't think you have the risk which warrants such a thing, as mentioned, every company would have a positive ROI on MFA, security awareness training, email security, and a solid endpoint protection solution. So please keep that in mind. And again, of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and we'll see you soon.